up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome back to the Nerdy Narrative. This is a Heinz 57 channel, meaning a little bit of everything. I love to read in many different genres, so hopefully I can expose you to a lot of things you might not know about otherwise that you want to pick up and read for yourself. So today, we're going to talk about all of the things that I read in the month of July and what I rated it, and just a couple of sentences describing each book. As far as how my rating scale works, 5 stars means I absolutely loved it, could find 0 issues with it, auto by author, all of the things. 4 stars means I loved it, but there was some little something that I felt could have been done differently or better. 3 stars means it was still a good book. I still enjoyed it. There were a few issues with it, but the potential for greatness was there and I saw it. 2 stars means I liked it. It had a lot of problems. Maybe I liked the author's writing style, but not the book, or the other way around. 1 star, I did not like it, but I finished reading it. And then for DNFs, I don't rank those at all. So let's get started. I think I'm going to start with fantasy today. First up will be The Gray Bastards by Jonathan French. I actually think Jonathan French started out self-publishing this series when he began, and he got picked up by a publisher, which easy to see why. And this one I gave 4 stars. I really loved it. I'm about to read the 2nd book in the series, and the 3rd one comes out in September. Very eager for that. This is the story of different groups of sort of soldiers. They call them hoofs, but they're groups of half-orcs whose job is to protect what is called the Lotlands. That's where they live. The humans gave these half-orcs, half-humans, the Lotlands in exchange for protection from the full-blooded orcs that are on the other side. And being half-breeds, they are looked down upon, the full-blooded orcs and the humans. But what's funny is how important the half-breeds are between the 2 full-blooded races. And there's a really cool thing that the author uses to show how important these half-orcs are. Very much looking forward to continuing this series. Next is the 6th book in the Dark Tower series. That is Song of Susanna by Stephen King. Boy, this book has a really bad rap, and I don't know why. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I guess I could say that people who didn't like it, maybe they didn't like it because it didn't push the plot forward. It was more of a side quest, but I feel there were a lot of important things revealed here that are going to be very crucial in the last book of this series. But because the story didn't move forward, I did knock a star off and give this one 4, but it is definitely one of my favorites in the series. Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. This is the first standalone in the First Law world, and this book was crazy. Revenge, plain and simple, all about revenge. It did get a little bit draggy in part 6. I really saw it going a different direction than what it did go, and I should be used to Joe Abercrombie doing that. He is not predictable. He never does what you think he's going to do, and if you decide you're going to flip your way of thinking, nope, that's when he decides to flip it on you in a sneak attack. I did enjoy this very much. I gave it 4 stars because I think it needed to be shorter. I really do. We got the point. That being said, Joe Abercrombie still managed to write amazing characters that I loved reading about. I laughed so much. He is really good at putting good humor in his works. And he does it with all of them. He doesn't just have like one character who provides the comedic relief. They're all funny in their own way, and it just makes it so you don't get upset when he changes point of view on you. So I loved it. Can't wait to continue on with the next book and the standalones, which is The Heroes. Next, we have Winds of Strife by Yuji Gutman. 5-star read. This is actually a reread. This time around, I had the physical copy to read along with listening to the audiobook. I was given a copy by the author of the audiobook to listen to and review, and that audiobook changed the experience for me just 1,000-fold. She really made these characters 3D and just made me a lot more sympathetic and empathetic, and I understood some characters better because of it. I formed different attachments to characters listening to it the second time than I did when I read it the first time. Except for one. I did still keep my favorite being Nye. This one is definitely what I would call a dark fantasy with a lot of horror elements. So if any of you out there are horror fans, but maybe not fantasy, but you've maybe been interested in trying fantasy, this one is a really good blend of the two, and I think would be a good starting point for you to see if fantasy is actually something you might enjoy. But I will end that there because a dedicated review will be up on Wednesday for you guys to hear more about Winds of Strife. I also read A Plague of Giants by Kevin Hearn. This is the first book I've read by Kevin. 5 freaking stars. I almost wanted to just go with a 10-star scale so I could give this one 10. This book was amazing. I love how it was written. It did take me a minute to get into. The way it's a multi-POV, but it is told by a bard who uses a sort of magic to take on the appearance of the person whose story he is telling. And he takes all of these different people's stories and puts them together in chronological order to spread the word as to how these particular giants, called the Bone Giants, showed up, why they're there, why they are invading, and just killing everybody. It took me a minute to get used to that, but when I did, oh, I was so in. I also love the magic. Each of the different groups of people that live in the different, I don't know if they call them towns or cities, different areas, they each have in that location a spot that you can go to see if you would be blessed with the kenning or magic from that area. And then that's not even getting into these crazy bone giants. Like, they're scary. 12 feet tall, and they have bones around them, and their faces painted like skulls. I can't wait for book 2. I've already got it ordered and on the way. Next is a YA fantasy called Weavers by my friend John Walker. First of all, if you love anime or manga, I think this book would really appeal to you. It is definitely age appropriate. I could hand this to my tweenie or young teenager with no qualms whatsoever for them to read it. Not only is it what I would call a clean read, it's very educational about nature, respecting nature, working with nature, being mindful of what you do and how it affects nature, because the weavers are people with the ability to combine their human essence with nature, air, water, earth, fire, and weave magic. Our main characters are high school weavers, and their relationship and rapport is just so wholesome. It's so good. Just the way they interact with each other is typical of what the relationships you have with your best friends growing up. I just really enjoyed my time spent with this one. There was one spot where I thought something was going to happen to one of my favorites, and I was like, John, if you do something to that character, I'm going to be upset with you. I was through with it before I was ready to be done with it, so I'm going to need book 2 quick, fast, and in a hurry. The next one, I believe, is my first official middle grade book. I don't know if Percy Jackson is considered middle grade. Is he? I'm not sure. But I do know that The Last Shimmer by Sage Hyatt is. This is a story of 2 young girls who are responsible for saving the world from the shadows, their shadows. Our shadows are basically tired of being substanceless. They're tired of always being in the dark. They want to have flesh. They want to be made real. And they come up with a plan for it. And they start a takeover of our bodies. Basically, they want to switch the shadow with our soul. And our main character, Tiger Lily, is trying to save the world. Y'all, this was written by a 10-year-old. It's multi-POV. Can you believe that? That story I just described to you was created and written by a 10-year-old. I would love if you guys checked it out. I gave it 5 stars. I was just absolutely amazed with Sage's ability at writing this story. I do want to say another one of my friends read and reviewed this on Goodreads after I mentioned it when I read it, and I think he said it was on Kindle Unlimited. So guys, if you have that, please take a minute to read and review this for me. So that'll take care of all of my fantasy, my YA, and my middle grade. Let's get into horror. I'm gonna start with a couple of short story collections that I read. The first one is an indigenous horror story collection called Anoka by Shane Hawk. I'm also very happy to announce Shane has some more stuff in the works. He tweeted about it recently, so I'm very excited to see what he is about to have out on the wire. But this collection is fantastic. What I really love is at the back, he writes a little blurb about each story, why he wrote it, what the inspiration was, which I love. While all of the stories were different and had different characters in them, they all took place around Anoka, which is the Halloween capital of the world. But this one was a 4-star read for me on this collection. The other collection that I read was sent to me by my friend Steve Talks About Books and Stuff. That is Nocturne by H.B. Diaz. This is another new author for me. I loved this collection. All of the stories had a sort of different tone. It didn't feel like they were all written by the same person because they were all different, but they were all written so well, the style, you knew you were reading the same author, if that makes sense. So I loved how different, unique each story was, and I absolutely ate this collection up. I need more by her as soon as she can write it. I believe she is also working on something else, but wow. This one was so good. It had some really amazing stories in it. I had goosebumps on top of goosebumps. I'm like looking, checking my peripherals, but I just couldn't stop turning the pages. Loved it. This one was a 5-star read for me. Next up, from a Bram Stoker nominee, Ross Jeffrey, I read Tome, which is the prequel to the novel he wrote last year called Juniper. I absolutely loved it. This took place in a jail, Juniper Correctional. It's a small country jail where in the first chapter we meet something truly evil. So he did what I absolutely love to happen in my horror books. That first chapter, prologue, I want a taste of what is in this book. What is the evil, malevolent force I'm going to be coming into contact with? I need to have a taste test. He does that and he delivers. It will definitely grab you and pull you in and not let you go. This page turner was just full of foreboding suspense, just some crazy things that were happening. There are a lot of inmate deaths. I mean, there are a lot. They're happening really quickly next to each other, and as a result, it garners the attention of the U.S. Marshals, who send a group down there to investigate. And you know how those small town hick people are when you send feds to get in their business, right? Go ahead and amp that up to 100, guys. This was amazing. The third one he is already working on. That one's going to be called Scorched. I'm so excited to read that one. Tome, I gave 4 stars to. And then on my Kindle, I read The Goners by L. Stevenson. That is the first book in the Boatmore Butcher trilogy. Guys, this one was 5 stars all the way. In fact, it was my favorite read of July. This book was so good that when I finished, I had a book hangover for a week. I was so addicted to the adrenaline rush from reading this book that when it was over, I felt like something was missing. I was so sad. And it's not that the books that I read after it were bad. I had some really enjoyable 5-star reads after it, but I wanted more of that feeling I had when I read this book. And I won't go into more detail because I did do a dedicated review for The Goners, which I'll have in the cards for you. Definitely check that out. This one is another one that is on Kindle Unlimited. So check it out on Kindle, and then if you're like me and you love it as much as I did, you're going to order yourself a physical copy as well. Next, I read The Ark for The House of Little Bones by Beverly Lee, coming out September 21st, I believe. This book was another fantastic read. This one had a lot of thrill, a lot of suspense that just got built throughout the story. It was amazing. I gave it 4 stars. I loved how at the end the author included a little chapter or short story, if you will, about the origin story of the Bone Lady, which was just the icing on the cake. I thought that was wonderful. I loved getting it at the end. The mystery of not knowing who she is, what her intentions were throughout the book was phenomenal. It just really helped with the air of mystery around the story. But at the end, when it was over, just getting to know where she came from and why she was the way she was, I loved it so much that I went and downloaded everything I could find by Beverly Lee onto my Kindle. Cannot wait to read more by her. I love the way that she writes. I love how she tells her stories. This book was phenomenal, and I hope you guys pick it up for a great October read. And then next up was Wallflower by Chad Lutzke. This was an audiobook that I got somehow. I don't know how I ended up with the audiobook, but it was there. I was hunting up all of the indie and self-published reads that I could for the Indie Accords, and I thought, you know what? Here's my audiobook for the month. This book was amazing. This was another introduction to a new author. I read so many new authors this month that are now authors I have to read more by. Chad Lutzke, this book was amazing. Still feel weird saying that this is the most beautiful story about addiction, drug addiction, that I've ever read. Guys, it just makes sense. It's about a teenager who encounters a homeless drug addict. And he just thinks to himself, I just don't understand how a stable, sane person could allow themselves to get that way. And so he decides, after doing a lot of research, he's going to prove that you can experiment without getting addicted. This book was amazing. And again, I finished it and got on my Kindle and started downloading other Chad Lutzke to read. I knew 3 chapters in this was going to be a 5-star read, and it absolutely was. That will take care of all of my horror reads for science fiction. I only got into 1 this month. I have just really been neglecting my sci-fi reads, but I read the Psychic Memoirs by Ryan Hyatt. This is part of his Terrified series, but they are standalones. You don't have to read the one that he wrote before this one to get it, but it was referenced. And because it was referenced, I need to read it. I need to see if there are any tie-ins. I want to see how these liberators came to be in the world here. I mean, I kind of know why. There was an earthquake that happened, and the earthquake caused some severe damage. We're in the greater depression. Humanity is trying to rebuild the best they can. It doesn't feel like it's going well, but there are these huge robots called the Liberators that help keep the peace, because of course whenever you have tragedy and disaster such as this, you've got the really bad people who use it as an opportunity to loot, to steal, to beat down people and take over like Beverly Hills where they never would have before. Just things of that nature. I think there is something happening in the background here. And the government thinks so too, because there is a teenage psychic that they're trying to get their hands on. I think it's because she can see into the future and perhaps see who or what is about to happen. But the government and the people that are trying to get her seem to think that she is going to be the one responsible for saving humanity, saving the world. I think there's going to be another book after this. I need the one before it, and then I'm going to need the one after it. And then I read an historical fiction mystery. The time frame it's set in, there's still a lot of gold fever going around. We have a young lady, Rose. She graduates finishing school. Some man she's never met before shows up on behalf of her father to take her home. They get home. The first thing that happens, they discover Rose's father. He's dead. He's been murdered. And so the mystery begins. Who killed Rose's father? Why? What was going on? Was he into something? Rose doesn't know. He pretty much dropped her off at finishing school for 5 years. They weren't close. In fact, she didn't even know where he lived If this man, Joe, hadn't shown up to take her there, she would not have had any idea where to go. So when somebody starts trying to blackmail Rose to find the secret gold vein that her father was rumored to have found, she's at a loss. They're trying to blackmail her to do this, but she's like, I didn't even talk to this man. I didn't even know where he lived. How am I supposed to find it? And it's probably not even real. If it was real, why wasn't he mining it? Why hadn't he claimed it? You know, so there's a lot going on. We also have a little touch of romance. I really loved it, and I don't really like a whole lot of romance. Not the kind where the two characters just meet and fall in love instantly and rip each other's clothes off and fall into bed. Like, I don't like that kind. I like the slow exploration of feelings sort of kind. And that's where we were with this one, so I really loved it. It was just a good, fun, wholesome mystery story that I need more of. Next up is Deathbed and Breakfast by Bart J. Gilbertson. A cozy mystery with a lot of laughter. There was one character in here, Felix, who I just love. Felix stole the show every time he came across the pages. This one reawakened my desire to read more mystery and start incorporating that into my monthly TBRs here and there. It was a very fun, fast read. I enjoyed it. But our story is about a granddaughter who is traveling with her very sick grandfather. They're going to see a specialist in another town. He's run out of his medication. They stop in a little town to get it refilled, but the pharmacy has closed because things close early in a little town. Well, the owner of the establishment, very nice, calls over to this bed and breakfast and says, you know, go stay here. First thing in the morning when my pharmacist gets in, I'll fill it and have it sent straight to you. So our duo makes it to the bed and breakfast, and sort of like Clue, there are other guests that we meet that are staying there as well. Our other guests are very interesting as far as who they are and why they're there, and that is something that you will need to read this for yourself, because if I tell you, it's a dead giveaway. But I enjoyed this one very much. I read it in 2 sittings as well and ended up giving it a 4-star rating as well. And finally, we will end with classics. I finished East of Eden by John Steinbeck. 5 stars all the way. I loved this book so very, very much. I want to read it again. I am looking forward to reading it again and again and again and again. It is quite simply a story about 2 families in the Salinas Valley in California back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. We are just quite literally reading about them living their lives. It takes a lot of influence from the book of Genesis. Some people call it a retelling of Genesis. I call it more of an influence because it's not exactly a retelling. Very interesting. There's so much to enjoy here. I was part of a live stream with the Codex Cantina about this book. We did start off with non-spoilers before we got into spoilers. So if you would like to hear more to see if this is a book you would enjoy, click that link in the cards and check that out. And that is everything that I read for the month of July. I read a ton of indie for the Indie Accords. I met a lot of new authors that I just really enjoyed. Can't wait to read more of. So that is always a win. My favorite read, I already told you guys, was The Goners by Elle Stevenson. And because I read so much, this video has already gone on way longer than probably you or I want it to. So I'm not gonna have a long outro. I'll just say thank you for watching. Hit me up in the comments down below. Did you participate in the Indie Accords? Did you find any new authors you're excited about and want to share with me? Guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed the wrap up. Take good care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.